So, in less than 24 hours after China announces new tariffs on $75 billion worth of American goods, including cotton, tea, pork, auto parts, autos, many other commodities, American oil, etc., President Trump announced more tariffs against China. So I was expecting, before the tweets came out and more announcements yesterday, and more details came out today, I was expecting this to maybe take perhaps sometime in September or October, but President Trump decided not to waste any time. And so this tit for tat escalating trade war, which is actually really more than a trade war. Listen to the work from Christopher Balding, who is a Asian economics professor. Go listen to his work or his writings on this. And here we go again. So this is just going to keep on escalating. China was hoping to wait out President Trump and hope that he loses in the 2020 election. But it seems like things are going to get even crazier. So Monday, for the stock market, guys, Monday is going to be very interesting. Very interesting now, because we've had now tit for tat tariffs increases in 24 hours, back and forth. Just nuts. Yes, I hear all the time that I sound like Ben Shapiro. I look absolutely nothing like him. Maybe when I was 16 years old, I looked like Ben Shapiro. So, the stock market on Monday, I think we're going to see a lot of volatility. I think we could see potentially a down move of 2%, maybe even more than 2% in the general stock market indices of the S&P 500 and the Dow. Now, the general stock market indexes of the Dow and S&P 500, they are only down about 6% from all-time highs. However, if you look at the charts of both of them since January of 2018, there is a lot more volatility in those charts. There's a lot more, especially downward volatility. The downward moves are like the charts are falling out of bed and there's falling knives and something has to come in there. Probably the plunge protection team has to come in there and rescue the stock charts. And if you want to hear something funny, normally I don't like going back in the past a lot and calling people out publicly, but this guy intentionally embarrassed me. So I think Paul Craig Roberts is a brilliant man. He's the former Assistant Treasury Secretary. If you go back into the archives of my channel from 2017, after President Trump had won the election, the 2016 election, and he was in his first year as president, and I had been paying very close attention to Trump about talking about tariffs on China. He had been talking about this for a very long time when he was just a private citizen, and I interviewed Paul Craig Roberts, and he basically, in the interview, he called me a moron for suggesting that President Trump would actually put tariffs on. He actually called me a moron. He said that it was against WTO, World Trade Organization rules, and that it was illegal to do so, and that President Trump would never put tariffs on China because he is violating the law. And then I proceeded to try to give him historical examples of where politicians and people in government routinely either break the law or change the law. And he didn't want to hear any of it. So you want to do that? Go back. You want some laughs? I don't care if you think at the time he embarrassed me, I knew I was right. At the time he embarrassed me on a recording, I knew I was right, though. I knew Trump was adamant about this issue. I knew Trump would put the tariffs on, even though it was against World Trade Organization rules, because you know what? The U.S. created the World Trade Organization, so that basically means if they want to, they can change the rules or break the rules. So this is just proof. He's a very smart guy. I respect him still, but he just totally shit the bed on that call. Yeah, but Ben Shapiro's always wrong. Go back and look up the predictions that Ben Shapiro's made. He's a smart dude, but he's either paid to be wrong by like the Israeli government and the military-industrial complex, or he's just, all of the predictions he makes are totally wrong. On a lot of his positions are wrong, and a lot of the predictions he makes are totally wrong. So let me just talk about Trump's tariffs now. So Trump announced that in response to the $75 billion in tariffs that China had just imposed on the U.S. yesterday, which, quote, should not have been put on as they were politically motivated, starting October 1st, the existing 25% tariffs on the $250 billion in Chinese goods will now rise to 30%, and the 10% tariffs on the $300 billion in Chinese goods that was supposed to actually start in December. Remember, that was pushed back. So Trump had agreed to delay that to December, and China saw that as weakness. So China attacked with a more aggressive tariffs there because they saw the delay. Remember, the 10% tariffs on the $300 billion in Chinese goods was initially supposed to start September 1st, and then Trump, because I guess they were hoping to make progress in the trade negotiations, it got moved back to December. The Chinese government saw that as weakness, and now Trump has moved that back to September 1st, and instead of 10% tariffs on $300 billion in Chinese goods, it will now be 15% tariffs on the $300 billion in Chinese goods. And by the way, guys, I believe that is tariffs on all Chinese goods now. I saw a chart of this a week or two ago, and I believe it's tariffs on all Chinese goods. So the Trump announcement is, for many years, China and many other countries have been taking advantage of the United States on trade, intellectual property theft, and much more. Our country has been losing hundreds of billions of dollars a year to China with no end in sight. Sadly, past administrations have allowed China to get so far ahead of fair and balanced trade that it's not fair and balanced trade at all, that it has become a great burden to the American taxpayer. As president, I can no longer allow this to happen. In the spirit of achieving fair trade, I don't think trade's going to end up being fair, but this is what governments do when they're fighting over a shrinking economic pie when the global economy is starting to go totally down the drain. We must balance this very unfair trading relationship. China should not have put new tariffs on $75 billion of United States product, politically motivated. Starting on October 1st, the $250 billion of goods and products from China currently being taxed at 25% will be taxed at 30%. Additionally, the remaining $300 billion of goods and products from China that was being taxed, initially it was September 1st, and then it was moved back. I guess he didn't mention that. It was supposed to be taxed at tariffed at 10%, now be taxed at 15% tariffs. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So just really interesting stuff. Little John, I agree. Ben Shapiro is a neocon, pro-Israel butt-kissing traitor. Yeah. I don't know about traitor. I don't know if I call him a traitor. He's getting paid very handsomely by the military-industrial complex and the Israeli government. So who knows what he really believes, but a lot of his predictions that he's made, I think he said Trump had no chance to win the 2016 election and some other stuff. He's made some really dumb predictions. He's a smart dude, but I think he's paid to be wrong. Let me just put it that way. Is it possible to file a lawsuit against Trump for market manipulation? Oh, good luck with that one. Good luck with that one. I'm not holding my breath. This is what governments do. I knew Paul Craig Roberts was wrong about that. This is what governments do throughout history, especially large governments, an empire, or a large government that has a large economy. Is they're always looking to change the rules, to break the rules, and then get the rules officially changed later so they don't get in trouble. It's very common throughout history. But he was adamant that the U.S. government would stick to the World Trade Organization laws. Come on, did you actually think that they were going to... Trump has been talking about... He was talking about tariffs before he officially announced he was running for president. He was talking about that he's going to put on big tariffs, that he didn't care about what the World Trade Organization rules were, that he was going to do what he wanted. Christopher, I think Trump is... I think both Xi and Trump are using this escalating trade war and not negotiating to their advantage. they are both trying to show strength here, which is why it is now in neither party's interest now for a deal. If China agrees to a deal, if China agrees to concessions, Xi looks weak. And if Trump agrees to a deal, the Democrats will say he screwed over American workers. So at least on the surface, it is one of the few bipartisan issues that Democrats and Republicans actually agree, a good amount of Democrats and Republicans actually agree on, is that China has caused problems in the U.S. economy. Look, I respect Paul Craig Roberts. I think he's a smart guy. He just embarrassed me on a recording in 2017. He made me feel, I knew I was right, but he embarrassed me on a recording. So now we get to go back and we get to say, I told you so. He said that Trump would put no tariffs, zero tariffs. He said it was illegal. And guess what governments do when rules are illegal? They change the rules. The trade war is not fake, Jeff. The trade war is not fake. We actually have a Cold War. It's more than just a trade war. It's a new type of Cold War. I disagree with you, Jeff. The trade war is not fake. People are being hurt. There are businesses being hurt. Farmers, American farmers, a lot of them are being hurt. There are manufacturers, Chinese manufacturers, who are being hurt. I don't know where you're getting this trade war is fake nonsense. There's a couple people in the gold community repeating this stuff. I disagree with them. A 30 to 60 second delay. Yeah, I guess maybe I could do that. But people could always just, once the stream is done, they could always just re-listen to that beginning part. From what I hear, a lot of people, even if they're subscribed on the subscribe bell, even if they hit the notification bell, they're subscribed to my channel and hit the notification bell for Wall Street for Main Street, they still are not getting notified of live streams now. I've heard from at least half a dozen people in the last couple weeks that that's the case. And my views are down on some of the videos, are down a little bit. And thank you very much to my 100+ Patreon account contributors. If you like the live stream, please hit the like button. If you don't have any money to tip, that's fine. All you have to do is to help out, just hit the like button. It's much appreciated. It is much appreciated. Sega 12 Bear, this is all an orchestrated show. It's really obvious everything is pre-planned. Are you talking about the escalating tariffs and the trade war? I've heard details of the trade negotiations from Kyle Bass releasing stuff publicly, and I can tell you that this is not pre-planned. That the U.S. really thought with Kyle Bass and other trade negotiators that China was going to finally agree to a deal about 4 months ago. And China then, at the last hour or so, they tried to remove 50 pages of a 150-page trade agreement to remove all the enforceable actions. We have been in a trade war for a long time, but a lot of people didn't realize that. A lot of Americans actually had a very positive view on China until recently. It's only been the last couple years that more Americans have woken up. Thank you for the super chat, Mickey. I appreciate it. Buy GLD? Unless you're a day trader, this is not financial advice. Unless you're a day trader, I wouldn't touch GLD. There's no benefits to buying GLD. The gold ETF? That's garbage. It's just a gold proxy trading vehicle. You're not getting any exposure to real gold. And if you look at I talked about this earlier in the show, if you look at the stock charts for the S&P 500 and the Dow, really all the gains since January of 2018 have been given back. And the stock charts now since January of 2018 on both of the major stock market indexes in the United States, they've gotten a lot more volatile. And there's a couple falling knives there where they were literally, the stocks were about to crash and then they were bought, probably by the plunge protection team. So let me see here. I'm on the Dow Jones stock chart since January of 2018, and February 5th, 2018, the Dow crashed and then it was bought. And then again, let's see here, on March 19th, 2018, the Dow crashed again. That was a big crash. The crash had started March 5th, 2018, and then that was another falling knife on March 19th, 2018 that was bought. And then from June 4th, 2018, the Dow started to have problems again to June 25th, 2018, then that was bought. And then and then September 17th, 2018, the Dow started to it looked really bad on the chart. And then the falling knife was caught again on October 22nd, 2018. And then the volatility after that, the rally then from November 5th, 2018, the volatility just really started to accelerate. Remember November and December 2018, we had a big drop in stock prices. And then we had, looks like an artificial manipulation rally starting December 17th, 2018. Remember, the emergency meeting was Christmas Eve. That was I need a swig of water. I'm still tired from the Ron Paul Institute conference earlier. Remember, we had an emergency meeting on Christmas Eve where, like, Steve Mnuchin screwed up the press release and he actually mentioned the plunge protection team by name. He mentioned, like, the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department, the plunge protection team were all going to have a meeting, and that shocked people. I covered this. It was nuts that it was actually mentioned. Then the stock market rallied very strongly after, looks like that falling knife was caught on December 17th, 2018. The Dow rallied very, very strongly up until February 25th, and then had another little correction almost. So the volatility, guys, is starting to come back. Another falling knife. Again, let's see here in the chart here. That's May 27th, 2019. And July 8th, 2019 could be a potential top. The flight capital that is coming back into the U.S., I don't see any sign that the flight capital that is leaving emerging markets, that is leaving the European Union, that is leaving China, is going into the major stock market indexes in the United States. I see signs that flight capital is going into the U.S. Treasury market and copying basically Stanley Druckenmiller and betting on ZIRP, or zero interest rate policy. But I think we're going to have a lot more volatility going forward, and I think Monday potentially could be extremely volatile because now we've had tit-for-tat tariffs in 24 hours announcements. Just more escalation. The VIX normally, I just saw a question there, Avariel Blackwing. So I just saw a question here from you about the VIX. So the VIX may pop another 20 or 30%, but the problem is, this is not financial advice, just my opinion. If you are buying and holding the VIX, normally the VIX is whacked back down. So if you look on the VIX chart, normally after a 20, 30, 40% move in the VIX, it gets whacked down hard again. So being a long-term investor, buying and holding the VIX doesn't seem like a smart play. It seems that Wall Street loves to, after the VIX pops up, it's whack-a-mole. Like I said, it gets whacked back down within a couple days. Now, maybe if we do have a big stock market crash, that will change, but the recent behavior of the VIX for the last couple years is that anytime there's a big pop-up in the VIX, within a couple days, it's crashing and right back down. More NDA says sure looks like a repeat of the 1920s. Yeah, the historical period, and I've talked about this, it's a repeat in my opinion, very similar to the capital inflows into the US from 1927 to 1929. I think there's going to be a lot more volatility on Monday for sure. Jeff, I agree with you that China does have a problem feeding its own people, and they've made it clear they did buy a little bit of soybeans, a tiny amount of soybeans from the U.S., but nowhere near enough. And they have those tariffs on U.S. agricultural products as well, including American pork, which is kind of head scratching considering the African swine flu problems that China has and how high the food prices are for vegetables, poultry, and especially pork in China. But China did increase their soybean imports from Brazil, I think, by 8% recently. Yeah, I think Monday could get pretty ugly. That is a really good economic cartoon. Dump Trump, he has gone off the deep end. John, little John, little John. This is what, yeah, I can't see the couple letters in front of the rest of your screen name. Trump promised this. Okay, this was one of his campaign promises, that he would put the tariffs on, that he would fight. So whether I don't agree with trade wars and tariffs, but he's doing what he promised. What is worse, a world war or a trade war? Well, historically speaking, currency wars, trade wars, and real wars. So what is worse? It's escalation. So first you get currency wars, you get tariffs and trade wars, you get beggar thy neighbor policy, competitive devaluation, you get countries normally with the larger economies fighting over a declining economic pie, fighting for the same or larger scraps of a declining global economic pie, and then that's when things can go to real war. Or you get a situation historically like Smoot-Hawley, where the American Congress in the U.S. and FDR banned exports to Japan, I believe, of oil and rubber, and Japan's economy could not get the raw materials they needed, and that basically collapsed Japan's economy. So we're heading, I wish I was wrong, but it looks like we're heading towards that path. So asking which is worse, a trade war or a real war, you haven't studied history enough. Because these things progress. The currency wars, the trade wars, the tariffs, then comes the bans on commodities. And when the bans on commodities come, that means either you're going to hurt a country's manufacturing or hurt a country's ability to have like fuel for their automobiles or food. And then that's when things get really serious. In the short term, who knows, Caribbean, in the short term, who knows what's going to happen with gold and silver. A lot of gold and silver, eventually, if the crisis gets worse, bad enough, the dollar and gold will rise together. That's my opinion. But in the long term, I mean, all this negative, the chart, if you guys want to see one of the craziest charts I've ever seen in my life, it's from that article about how there's now $1 trillion in negative yielding debt. I should probably make a short video about it or do another live stream show on it. And we've gone from January of this year, January 1st, 2019, we had $20 billion globally of negative yielding corporate debt. And now it's taken off like a rocket ship to over $1 trillion in less than 9 months. That is insane. The chart is absolutely insane. It's probably the craziest chart I've ever seen. It literally looks like a rocket ship. So as long as these governments are planning on doing zero interest rate policy or ZIRP or negative interest rate policy or NIRP, and then you have governments like Australia talking about banning cash and cashless society. In the short term, gold and silver could go down a little bit or have corrections. There could be profit taking. In the long term, gold and silver are going to start to do very, very well. And gold is actually at or near all-time highs in every currency. I think the euro, it's not at all-time highs yet. It's close. I think the last time I looked, it was around 4% off the all-time highs. Gold is at an all-time high in every other currency except for the euro, which it's close, and the US dollar. And someone was asking about GLD. Only if you're a trader, a day trader. If you're looking for insurance, GLD is not the answer. GLD is not real gold. They don't do independent audits. It's a mess. My friend Trace Meyer, who was a lawyer before he became a very successful Bitcoin speculator, he did an old video, I think in 2010 or 2011. It's still up on YouTube, and he goes through the prospectus, through a lot of the legal loopholes inside the GLD prospectus. So if you're a day trader and you want exposure to a higher gold price, or you want to hedge with options, not financial advice, but if you want to do those types of sophisticated trades, then GLD is okay. If you want actual exposure to physical metal, GLD is not for insurance, savings, or wealth preservation. And GLD probably doesn't even have the metal, from what it sounds like in the prospectus. There are enough legal loopholes in the GLD investor's prospectus to drive a truck through. The other problem with GLD, guys, if you buy and hold GLD or SLV, you do not get long-term capital gains. So if you buy GLD now and the gold price, this is hypothetical, if you buy GLD now, shares of GLD now, and the gold price goes to $5,000, and you hold, let's say it takes 3 years or 4 years for gold to go to 5,000. And you buy and hold GLD now, shares of it, and it goes that high, you do not lock in long-term capital gains on GLD. You are not allowed to get the 10% capital gains taxes by buying and holding GLD. You are totally screwed, and it is taxed as a collectible. So you do not get any benefit from buying and holding shares of GLD or SLV. It is a trading vehicle which may or may not have any real physical gold in it, or physical silver if it's SLV. You want to speculate on GE? I think GE has a lot of problems. GE may need to restructure, Eric, just my opinion. I think GE has a lot of problems. The insider buying in GE, guys, could be a trap. It could be like Elon Musk when he bought shares of Tesla a while ago. Tesla has an enormous amount of problems. There's tons of well-documented evidence of accounting fraud at Tesla Motors. Exactly, Christopher. GLD can pay out in cash, but then you don't get, when you sell your shares of GLD, you're not getting a good tax situation. Your shares of GLD are not taxed. If you buy and hold it for years, it's not taxed well. If Warren Buffett got a sweet enough deal, he would probably buy back into GE. But it would have to be like some type of preferred shares or something structured. So even if he made a profit, yeah, GLD tax is very high. Someone just put 28%. I'm not sure of the exact number, but it's high. So sometimes insider buying doesn't always mean it's good. Insider buying sometimes is a bull trap. So it's meant to trap bulls and trick them. The car companies, Carlos, the car companies in the United States always overproduce, and then they shove it down the dealers' throats, the car dealers' throats. There's been tons of channel stuffing for years. I'm just giving my opinion, guys. I'm not giving financial advice. I'm just trying to highlight the mistakes or red flags in some companies, or the common mistakes that many investors make. Wall Street for Main Street is an investor education and research company. And I also have an educational technology company business plan that it's legit. It almost got funding, a six-figure check in 2015. I don't have a business partner right now. I need a new business partner to go do pitch meetings. Okay, I'm looking at listener questions and comments. I'm afraid you're afraid of Monday, Grace. Why, do you have a lot of long regular stock exposure? I think we're at the stage now where we could see every couple weeks or every month or two now new tariffs, new bans, some type of bans. China has talked about specifically targeting American companies. So any of the American military industrial complex companies that were involved in the $8 billion Taiwan fighter jet, they've talked about targeting them. Grace, maybe you should email me, learn hedging strategies then. There's volatility hedging strategies. Maybe email me then if you want to talk about it. I could send you some articles to look at. Yeah, the average person only does buy and hold, and in the environment we're in, it's very dangerous just to be buy and hold. I would rather, so a big mover, I like the ETF from Frank Holmes. It has exposure to the royalty and streaming companies and some of the best gold and silver miners. Go AU. GO, and then the gold periodic table of elements symbol AU. That ETF, the chart on that, I could pull it up real quick. It's been looking pretty good. I think that's a good ETF. There's also the two Sprott ETFs for gold miners. There is SG. So Sprott Gold SGDM. David Morgan SGDM. Sprott Gold David Morgan. That ETF, that's a Sprott Gold Miner ETF. And then there's the Sprott Junior Gold Miners ETF. That is a basket of juniors. So remember, I've warned you guys in the past with my mining stock education lectures about how dangerous buying individual junior mining stocks is, all the things that can go wrong, how misleading or fraudulent some junior miners can be, the dilutions, the capex, all those problems, how the juniors raise money and then spend it to advertise with YouTube videos to pump the stock, or the people who run the junior miner don't spend any money drilling. They spend 10% or less of the budget drilling, and 90% of the capital that's raised is used for a lavish lifestyle for the people running the company. So this ETF is SG, Sprott Gold, and then DJ. So like the music DJ. Oh, I'm glad you like the mining stock lectures. There's a lot of risk buying an individual mining stock, and this is not financial advice, just my opinion. The average retail investor, unless they're paying for a good research newsletter, paid newsletter from someone who's very good at it, or they're buying a mining stock ETF, a basket of these things with some of the ones I just mentioned, or they're buying a royalty. The royalty and streaming companies are basically, they're very similar to mining stock ETFs, especially the larger royalty and streaming companies. Like Franco-Nevada, the bad thing about Franco-Nevada is they have oil and gas exposure, but my educated guess is that they will go out and make an acquisition and they will reduce their oil and gas exposure and increase their gold exposure again. I think they still have like 80% gold and silver exposure. 80% of their revenues are still gold and silver. But the larger royalty and streaming companies are basically like owning a mining stock ETF. Except there's I'd say there's more upside for certain royalty and streaming companies if you know what you're doing. Christopher, I don't even know if Jerome Powell wants to be there anymore. But yeah, it's very interesting that Trump just put out the tweet, yesterday? Who's the worst enemy, she or Jerome Powell? I mean, Jerome Powell is a really rich guy. Why would he want to take this type of abuse from Trump? If I was rich, I would want to deal with this stuff from Trump. I want to go relax. I don't need that. I wouldn't want that type of stress in my life. Thank you for the super chat, Michael. Which country are you in, Michael? Because it depends how much taxes you would pay if gold rose, and you would use it to pay off your mortgage if you sold the gold. Because here in the United States, if you're here in the United States, you do not get any benefits from buying and holding physical gold. Other countries are different, though. I've gotten quite a few super chats today. Thank you, Mickey. Thank you, Michael. Simard, I appreciate it. Thank you, Pebble Man twice. Appreciate it. And Michael. Is Chinese demand for soybeans shifting from U.S. to Brazil? I talked about this months ago. Go back in my archives. I talked about this months ago, and I named some of the agricultural companies in Brazil. There was like Bunge, and there was there was Cresud. Cresud, I believe, owns a lot of farmland in Argentina and also Brazil, and they grow soybeans. Cresud was one of them. And then there was a Brazilian meat company, I think like JBL Meats or something. So China may buy pork from them. Yes. Yadin sent me a super chat. Could food pressure cause China to cave or unlikely? Yes, if it gets bad enough. So my best source in China, he said that one of the reasons for the Tiananmen Square March in 1989 was not just for freedom and democracy, it was because food prices were rising and people were starving. So the initial march and the demonstrations at Tiananmen were over students who could not afford the higher food prices. So yes, if food prices in China keep rising, bad things will happen inside China's own country. And right now, it sounds like food prices are really starting to roll. And if you just looked at the RMB, the exchange rate, the dollar to the RMB, it looks like China is starting to lose control of the exchange rate. And remember, in the last 10 days, China announced that they were restricting private sector gold imports. But one of my China sources said that could be because China does have a dollar shortage, and they just don't want to admit the weakness that they don't have the dollars to import physical gold from outside China, to use the dollars to buy physical gold from outside China. And so instead they announced a restriction to make it look like they're strong and that they're setting the policy rather than admitting weakness. So that gold import restriction story, you saw 2 of those stories on Zero Hedge in the last like 10 days or something. That probably was because China was trying to save face when they actually do have a dollar shortage. The farmland issue. So I've read stories for a long time, and I've heard stories from Brazil contacts that there's always corruption in Brazil with politicians who are willing to sell basically Amazon rainforest land to cronies, and for like 1 cent an acre, just cheap stuff. And there's always illegal slash and burn in Amazon farmland. That's been going on for decades. So there's been slash and burn in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil due to corrupt politicians who can legally sell the land to their friends for cheap, to like loggers and farmers for cheap. Yeah, Jack summarized it. Greedy Brazilians are burning the forest to clear land for ranching and farming, also for logging. They're chopping down the logs. Corrupted officials willing to sell cleared forest to China. Thank you. I'm glad you liked the Art Berman interview. I've tried 6 software recording programs, including Zencastr, which is studio quality audio recording software. The problem with Zencastr is my guests have to have a brand new computer and the right tech requirements, and a lot of my guests don't have brand new computers and don't have the most sophisticated requirements. So Zencastr, I tried it for a couple months, and most of the interviews did not work at all. And I've tried other software recording programs. Skype doesn't work for me anymore. So the only software recording program for audio interviews right now that works for me consistently, and I admit it's not the best. It's the audio quality for the Art Berman interview was solid. It wasn't the best and it wasn't the worst, but it was basically just a conference call recording program where people use their phones. I have not tried Zoom. I'm not sure how Zoom would work. I've tried, let's see here. I've tried like Evier. I've tried a number of, I forget all the names of them. I'm getting tired now. I should probably stop the stream soon. Oh, thank you for the other super chats, guys, for Sega 12 Bear. Sega 12 Bear, you mentioned how everything's going according to plan and scripted. I think the plan is screwed up often. I think there's a lot of mistakes along the way. Well, Yanin, as long as I maintain the 100 patrons and I keep increasing it to 150 and 200 patrons, and it keeps rolling like this, and it's starting to really roll, the amount of people who are contributing $1 a month or $5 a month or one-time donations, as long as that continues in, there's going to be future investments made in improvements and upgrades. You know, if I would have had another business partner helping me out with some of the, I'm literally doing everything by myself right now, so I'm like pretty burned out. I think I've had one day off where I haven't made a video or 2 videos per day, sometimes even 3 videos per day in the last like 2.5, 3 months. So I'm pretty burned out trying to do everything by myself. Do I like the Sprott? Rob asks, do I like the Sprott Gold Physical Silver Trust? Yes, those are very good. Now the problem, there is one issue with those, and that's redemption. So those are well structured and they do audits and they're insured. So the metal is there. The problem is redemption, because you have to have a lot of metal there. You have to have a lot of units to take delivery of the metal. That is the problem. So if you only have enough for like, I think you have to have enough units to get delivery of like, is it 400 ounces of gold? It's a large amount. So the average person who buys shares of like the Sprott Physical Gold Trust can never take delivery of the gold, because I think it's like a 400 ounce gold delivery minimum or something. But the gold is there, and they do the audits, and Jose says China will eventually devalue the RMB. China has already devalued, and the problem with that, Jose, is that now food prices in China are going crazy. Food prices in China, and this is with China's own data from China's National Bureau of Statistics, says that food prices in China have risen a lot. The average food price increase in just last year was 9%. Some of the food prices, Jose, have gone up 20%, 30%. Now pork, I'm hearing anecdotes that pork prices just in the last 30 days are going up even higher. And from what I've heard, the Chinese government has decided to basically end the subsidies on pork. They've given up. So they were subsidizing pork prices to try to prevent the average Chinese person from realizing that the pork prices were going up like crazy, and China has just stopped the subsidies. That's what I just heard in the last couple days from one of my top China sources. Well, here's the thing about the stock market. So the stock market could go down on this trade war news on Monday for most of next week. But as soon as the Fed announces that the Fed is restarting quantitative easing, that could immediately do a 180. Or at some point, the Fed doing quantitative easing might not matter. But the stock market could also start pricing in a devalued dollar, which would mean in nominal value, the stock market's going higher, even though in real value, your dollars are going to be buying you a lot less. I don't think China can do a deal now. They're trying to wait it out with Trump, and they're trying to, all the deals now that China has asked for, they want the Huawei CFO return. They want all the tariffs removed. All the demands China has made are, from what I hear, what Kyle Bass and others have said, who are privy to the stuff in the negotiations. I believe Gordon Chang is also one of the advisors. So he has talked in his recent interviews about how he's hearing from the people in the negotiating room the crazy demands that China has made. But Kyle Bass has said also recently, and he's doing free advising on the trade negotiation, that China just made ridiculous demands. They wanted the Huawei CFO released, all the charges dropped. They wanted the U.S. to give in to every single demand with Huawei, so all the contracts done for 5G. They wanted China wanted all tariffs against all their goods removed before they would agree to any deal. Yeah, they're doing Eric's right. They're doing unreasonable things to save face. Yep. It's all about projecting strength. Michael, so you don't pay a capital gains tax if you buy gold and then sell it? You might, Michael, this is not financial advice, but buddy, you need to look into this. You need to check to see what your tax bill would be if you bought gold and then it went up a lot and then you sold it. You need to understand what your tax bill would be. Okay, so you have an incomplete picture. Monday commodities might skyrocket. Robert, I don't know about the other commodities. We're not looking good. So oil is looking bad. Art Berman, in that interview that I did with him yesterday, he seemed to think that it wasn't that big a deal if some oil companies go bankrupt. I could tell you, I think it's a very big deal. I think there could be a very big bust in the oil industry. Very, very big. But the oil price needs to go lower. At current oil prices, some of the companies are going to slog along and do okay, but if the oil price goes much lower, then there's going to be a big bust. I'm not sure which China story, Leroy, because I've reported on a lot of things about China lately for the last 6 to 8 months.